you all for joining us today for day one of Collide. Looking forward to day two tomorrow. Today I'm going to be talking about the top 5 things that data executives are saying about AI, what we at DSC are hearing from data executives across the country that we talk to. So, little background about us. Amelia told you a bit in her opening remarks as well, but just to give you a lay of the land and some background on our perspective, Amelia and I both have backgrounds in data and AI from different industries. So I was a practicing attorney actually for about a decade and did a variety of data and AI projects in the legal space. Amelia was a senior data scientist and had a variety of data and AI roles at both large healthcare institutions as well as healthcare startups. So we have that perspective as buyers, users, and developers of data and AI solutions in industries where those are not always common or welcomed. So that's the perspective that we have in coming to this and trying to educate people about things that data and AI can do for them, but also some of the potential pitfalls and some of the things that organizations need to be aware of in implementing a lot of these solutions and technologies, in many cases that are more advanced than what those organizations are ready for. How do you do that? How do you get your arms around some of these exciting developments and actually move the needle for your organizations? And then obviously we've built this community over the last decade and love having you all here today. So our perspective, some of the things that we've gained over the last several years as an organization and as individuals, and our viewpoint is, number one, business tends to move a lot slower than technology. So there's, especially right now, a huge amount of technological change, innovation, particularly around AI, obviously, and businesses are lagging behind that change. And the faster the tech moves, that doesn't necessarily mean that the businesses that are trying to implement those technologies are moving any faster. So that's one big challenge, is how do you adapt to these new circumstances when your businesses often have limitations associated with them in terms of implementing and adopting new technologies. Cross-industry applications are a big focus of what we do here at DSC. So trying to get folks together from a variety of different industries, a variety of different organizations, and learning from each other about best practices. And particularly in our experience coming from industries like healthcare and legal that have historically lagged behind in data and AI implementation, there's a lot to be learned from other industries that are further along. And so industries can gain a lot from talking to one another and not being just siloed with folks who are within their own vertical. And then finally, the importance of community and connection to really getting insight on all of this. And I'll shed some light on what we're hearing from data executives through this community and the connections that we've built. It's a great way to understand you're not alone. A lot of organizations are dealing with the same thing that you're dealing with, and here's how they're handling those issues, and you can learn from each other and benchmark. A little bit more about Data Science Connect and kind of the background of the executives that are giving the perspective that I'm going to speak to in just a second. So we have over 100,000 data and AI professionals worldwide that regularly attend our in-person and virtual events, including 95% of the Fortune 500, 80 countries, and roughly 250 events since 2012. Our community is also about 55% executive and 45% practitioner. So we talk to a lot of data executives from Fortune 500 companies and other large enterprises in a range of company sizes, and really are in touch and try to remain in touch with what their needs are and where they are in their maturity and their data and AI journey. So everyone's talking about AI. It's been a huge focus, obviously, of this conference, but where are we really? How do we cut through the hype and really understand where we are across industries, across companies, in terms of AI adoption and maturity? So the 5 key takeaways that I'm going to talk about, we've gleaned from surveys that we've done of executives, roundtables, several of which are taking place at this event as well, webinars and panels that we often do with data executives, as well as our events, our roadshow. We've been to multiple different states this year doing executive events, our Align AI Executive Summit series, as well as this Collide Data and AI Conference, and next year we'll be doing even more in-person events, really to get to the bottom of what are the pain points that organizations are experiencing around data and AI, and how can we bring together all these different viewpoints, this community, to help organizations move the needle on these really important challenges. So the first takeaway that we're hearing from executives is the perception versus reality. So when we talk to executives, we find it every time we ask someone to participate in a panel discussion or an executive roundtable, and over, what these executives tell us is, well, we're doing some things around AI, but we're not really ready to talk about it. Or we feel like we're really behind, so I'm not sure I'm the best person to speak to this. And we hear it universally. We hear it from 90% plus of the people that are our panelists and our executive roundtable and executive dinner participants. Over and over again, they all say they feel underprepared to speak to any specifics with respect to AI or generative AI. And there's a benchmark anxiety. There's a fear among these folks, particularly it seems the more senior they are, the more fearful they are of benchmarking with their peers, that they're going to find out they are way behind the eight ball, that their organizations are far less mature than their competitors or than others in their industry or other industries. And it's just not true. I mean, when they start talking with other executives, you learn that everyone is kind of in the same boat. Everyone understands the transformative power of AI, understands the new capabilities that exist, but feel underprepared as an organization to utilize those technologies in their current state, either because they lack good data quality, they lack data governance, they lack the expertise in-house to be able to do these things, they lack the right solutions. So there's a variety of reasons, but I would say almost universally, organizations we talk to feel like they are all behind, and you can't all be behind, right? That's not how it works. And then this really emphasizes the importance of open dialogue. I think a lot of times when we talk to executives, they are relieved once they come to events like this and are able to benchmark with their peers, and they say, I'm not really as behind as I thought that we were, and I'm finding a lot of other organizations are behind in a lot of the same ways, and now I feel armed with more of a roadmap to be able to go and at least identify some of these challenges and what potential solutions might be. So that's one big trend we're seeing. Another is an unprecedented top-down pressure on senior data and AI executives. And then I'll pair that with the need to focus on strategic priorities. So the first part of that, we'll call it 2A, is the unprecedented top-down pressure. Generative AI, and in particular ChatGPT, has put a lot of pressure on data executives to move quickly with respect to AI because it's totally changed the public consciousness around AI and what it's capable of, what it can do for an organization. And so you have CEOs and boards of directors of publicly traded companies, Fortune 500 companies, who are texting their chief data officer saying, why aren't we doing anything with generative AI? I'm hearing all this stuff about ChatGPT. What are we doing? Right? I can type something in ChatGPT and it gives me this miraculous answer to my question. Why can't we use that for our customers today? Right? And that's a great example of why businesses are often behind the technologies, because just because it's theoretically possible with today's technology doesn't mean that it's responsible, doesn't mean that it's reliable, doesn't mean that it's accurate, and that it's going to actually translate to gains for your business. And it could, in fact, translate to substantial liabilities and risks. So I think that's trying to balance those perspectives and lending expertise to that is a real value add that we're seeing with top data executives, of being able to explain to their C-suite, to their board of directors, here are the things that we should focus on. Yes, AI is going to be a transformative technology. Yes, there are some things we can tackle today, but here's what the roadmap looks like, and here's why we don't need to rush things that don't need to be rushed, and maybe here are some places we could get some quick wins and some immediate ROI. So I think a couple of points here. AI is a tool. It's not a goal. So it is the new shiny object in the room, but your goal as an organization shouldn't be, how can we use AI? It should be, how can we solve our business problems? How can we move the needle on our strategic priorities? And by the way, there's a new technology, well, not new technology, but there are some new advancements around AI that are transformative and maybe allow us to do some things that we couldn't do before, and that's a new tool in our arsenal. Leveraging existing frameworks. So there are some ways in which AI truly is revolutionary and it truly is doing something new and doing things at a higher level than anything that's come before it. And that's important to recognize. But there are also many more instances where you can leverage existing frameworks and approaching AI just like you would approach any other new transformative technology that we've approached in the past. We've all been around for the internet, email, smartphones, many, many technologies that were transformative as well. Maybe not as transformative in the long term as AI will be, but we can use a lot of those same frameworks for things like data governance, data privacy, that we've already worked out over the course of the last several decades with these other emerging technologies. And finally, the importance of anticipating future implications of any developments that you're doing today. So thinking not just about what can AI do today, but what can it do in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. We're building that infrastructure today. So thinking about what are the things that we're doing right now that are going to influence what happens in the future. And particularly as AI gets more and more powerful, as there become more and more risks around things like autonomous AI, around ethics with respect to AI, where AI is making decisions with maybe limited or no human input, very critical to anticipate what the future implications of our actions today might be. The third thing that we're hearing is that data strategy is critical. So a number of the speakers that we've had at this conference already have really focused on this, and it's a very, very important point, which is that in many ways, the best AI strategy is an effective data strategy. So data, having quality data, as Peter from Informatica just mentioned, is foundational to success. It is really critical to anything that you want to do with AI. Is you've got to make sure that your data house is in order. So that involves not just having good data at a point in time or having quality data or having some good governance for a particular use case. This requires continuous work, continuous data management as you start to identify new use cases, as you start to leverage data that you've been keeping for years, as you start to leverage it in new ways, right? So maybe there's data that you haven't been able to effectively leverage, and now AI has opened the door to that. Unstructured data being a really good example of a way in which generative AI can provide a lot of value to data scientists and allow data scientists to do a lot more with their data than maybe they previously could have without these latest developments in LLMs. But it's a continuous process and continuously evaluating how does this impact what we're doing on the data side, these things that we want to do with AI. And then the investments in infrastructure. So I think this is a point that is maybe under-focused on. It's getting more attention now, but generative AI in particular uses a tremendous amount of resources. There's energy resources, there's water, there's tremendous infrastructure that you have to have, processing power, data centers, right? So all of this, it's taxing not just on your organization's resources, but it's taxing on downstream stakeholders, the environment. There's a lot to consider here in terms of what we need to do from an infrastructure standpoint to keep up with these new demands. So that's going to be a critical piece of this as we start to have more and more use cases where Gen AI and AI are applicable and are using a lot of processing power. We've got to think about what are the infrastructure investments that have to go along with that. And the fourth point here is that AI should be human-centric. So a lot of what we're hearing from executives is that, look, what is the point of all of this? If we're just building something for the sake of building it, just because we can do it, that doesn't mean we should do it. And as AI gets more and more advanced and is capable of replacing humans in more and more contexts, of taking humans' jobs, of serving really as a personal assistant to us in a lot of different areas of our lives, we need to think about what are we handing the keys over to, right? We need to think about what is responsible. Where are areas where we are improving the human condition with AI, and where are areas where potentially we're putting ourselves and our future at risk, right? Those are really critical discussions, and now is the time to be having those conversations before the genie is sort of already out of the bottle, but it's at least now at a place where we can grow AI in a responsible direction. But if we are not conscious of that, if we don't think about that and discuss it in the context of every advancement that we have as an organization, we're really opening ourselves up to a lot of danger, potential risks, potential future liabilities. So a few ways to think about that. One is augmentation versus replacement. So instead of just thinking about how can we replace human workers with AI, How can we augment them? How can we create something that is better than what a human or a machine could create on their own? That's a big piece of how AI can be human-centric. Investing in upskilling and reskilling, understanding that there will be folks displaced by AI, and that's okay. That's just like any other technology where things have been automated, where things have been made better. There are going to be some jobs that go away as a result of that. But what that means is, in order to continue to have a strong functioning society, a great economy where people are employed, we have to upskill and reskill our workforce to thrive in that new environment as opposed to being left behind by it. And then keeping a human in the loop, potentially, particularly for anything involving really large ethical questions, questions of life and liberty. Those are questions that need to be decided, at least in part, by a human. And maybe an AI can help give us some information that we didn't have before, can help us make better, smarter, faster decisions. But if they are really impactful decisions, then ultimately a human needs to be in the loop to ensure that we are respecting ethics. And there needs to be a process around that so that this isn't just sort of an ad hoc situation. You know, when we're making important decisions where AI is being consulted, we need to have a process for what we find acceptable and what we find unacceptable in using AI. And the fifth thing we're hearing from executives is that now is the time to address bias and equity in our data and in our AI. So developing ethical frameworks, like I said a second ago with human in the loop, figuring out what is off limits. What are the things that we are not going to have AI do within our organizations, within our society? And then what are the questions where we need to have a framework? We need to have policies in place. We need to have governance to ensure that there is responsible AI. Seeking out inclusive data sets. So data strategy, very key to having a good AI strategy, and this is one reason why, is if your data is biased, the AI is going to compound that bias. So very important to understand where are biases baked into our data, where are we using data sets that are maybe not representative of populations that maybe are already underrepresented, and we're now using that data set to plugging that into AI, building AI models on top of it, and making critical decisions based on that data that is not representative of our general population. So that's a really important component of this as well. And then developing robust bias mitigation strategies. So once you've figured out, look, we have some situations where we might be using data that is biased, or we might have situations where AI could potentially lead us in the wrong direction or a problematic direction. What is our strategy for dealing with that? Part of that could be keeping a human in the loop, but you've got to have some kind of mitigation strategy in place to deal with those things now before the questions get really, really hard in the coming years. Right now, we still have time to control these things, to build these processes out, but very quickly the technology is moving very fast. And if we don't have robust systems in place for dealing with these challenges, we could find ourselves in some very difficult situations in the future. So this leads to the final point. I think this is the overarching theme of those 5 takeaways that I just mentioned, which is that AI is both revolutionary and evolutionary. And so the evolution has to catch up to the revolution. So what do I mean by that? It's revolutionary. We all see it. Any of us who have used AI in any context see the many ways in which it is about to be revolutionary and already is revolutionary. A huge percentage of people are using ChatGPT at their workplace. AI is becoming quickly pervasive across a variety of aspects of our lives, and it is revolutionary in many ways relative to prior technologies that came before it. But the piece that's evolutionary is the implementation side of that. Organizations actually implementing AI, actually finding use cases where AI adds value, where it's a good fit for the strategic priorities of the organization, and where it's not ethically problematic, right? So that's the evolution that takes place. What are our data governance frameworks? What do those look like? What are our data quality and data management frameworks? How do we deal with ethical questions? Those are the evolutionary pieces that we need to put in place as organizations to be able to deal with this coming AI revolution where the technology is moving at an extremely rapid pace. So I think that's the trend that that it's really important for folks to zero in on right now. And I think a lot of data executives that we're talking to, that's what they're focused on is, all right, I can see what's coming. Now, how do we deal with it today? How do we start planning for the next 3, 5, 10, 20 years today in the things that we're setting up, the processes, and the technologies that we're putting in place? So we'd love for you guys to connect with us. We have webinars regularly as well as events throughout 2025. And thank you all for joining us. We're looking forward to a great day 2. Hope you'll stick around for the networking reception, which will be right outside in the lobby. Thank you.